Good morning, one and all. I just got booted out of StreamYard. Welcome to Wake Up. It's Monday, the 5th of January, 2026. It is 9:01 a.m. GMT. Thank you for being here. Lovely to see you all. Happy new 2026, as some people have pointed out. Not officially the new year. I mean, some people might consider it that if they follow the Gregorian calendar, which we do for the most part. But actually, for many people, the new year starts in spring. And I'm one of those. But anyway, I hope you are well. I hope you had a fabulous Christmas if you celebrate. And more besides, how are you all? You beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome to the show that knows you are so much more than a cog in a wheel. You are the wheel. Yes, indeed. Welcome to 2026. Wake up, Styly. Yes, Gwyneth, it's still winter. Cozy up time. Indeed it is. I hope you are all well. You beautiful people. Shug said, I'll never believe anything that comes out of the Vatican. And he's kicking off in fine style, is our Shug. I had a good rest, Synchronized Soul. Synchronized Soul, our Zoe, it's her birthday week. Happy birthday, Zoe. Please give Synchronized Soul a sub, you beautiful people. It's the very least we could do. She is pumping out some incredible content at the moment. Good on you, Zoe. Go for it. Go for it, everybody. How are you all? How are you all? Cheryl and Maria and Kira and Shinri, you're welcome, darling. How are you all? I hope you're well. You may have noticed we're not streaming on X today. X has a child abuse problem and I'm not aligning with it. Okay, we know what's going on over there. Absolutely. And I'll be talking in more detail about it shortly. So how are you? I hope you are well. I hope life is treating you well. I've missed you and it's been somewhat eye-opening, frankly, to look and see what's been happening while Wake Up has been napping. So here's our show so far today. We will be joined by journalist Warren Thornton, who will assess the geopolitical landscape, including Venezuela and Iran, and telling us more. And I'm delighted to be starting 2026 with a cherished psychotherapist friend of Wake Up, John Henden. He'll be here. He'll be asking for an urgent call for more widely available and effective services for people in acute emotional distress. Perfect time. Many people have something of a downer, a lull during winter, and we're in the thick of it right now. So absolutely perfect. Plus, we will be joined by author and publisher Dr. Paul Goddard. He'll be talking the profit in doom. And we know the type of people who profit from doom, don't we? And he says we must always follow the money. Yes, indeed, we must. Yes, indeed, we must. Good morning from Wales. Morning, Nikki. Can't be a good nap, Cavan. No, absolutely not. Beautiful, but Baltic here, says Jeannie. Marco, X is a problem. It's a real problem. So what else are we going to be talking about? Well, I will be commenting on that. Elon Musk's X, which has a child abuse problem. I'll also be looking at the latest to do with Erika, Kirk, the Grift that keeps on giving. Yes, indeed. And our shut the F up goes to MP Nigel Bad Breath Farage. Yes, indeed. And on the news front, animal welfare, screen manipulation. How many of you know about the little known directive from Hollywood that they are using to keep millions absolutely glued to their screens? I'll be talking about that. And I'll be ending with talking about how our scaffolding coming down on the house made me consider all manner of other things on a sort of a psychological level, on a metaphorical level, and it really got me thinking, and it was really, really wonderful. We do news different around here, as you jolly well know, because someone had to, and that someone is me. Lovely to see you all, Patty. Yes, lovely. Yes, Squidgy, Greta the Goblin loves a bit of doom and gloom, doesn't she? Yes, she does indeed. So before we're joined by our first guest, I just want to look at some news that has been happening. First of all, I made a comment on X this morning because I see that Mark Sexton, ex-policeman and one of the leading voices exposing Operation Tala, he's made a video appeal to Donald Trump. Now, bear in mind, Operation Tala is about British police hiding potential criminality to do with the experimental jab. And Mark Sexton has now appealed to the man who calls himself father of the vaccine. This is naivety on steroids. I'm sorry, Mark, this is just ridiculous. And I've told you so. I'm a straight shooter. It's just ridiculous. It reminds me of the time that you appealed to then Prince Charles, or King Charles, I think he might have been. They're not interested. They are the criminals. They're part of the problem. How many people are naively currently appealing to Trump to intervene in our country? Ridiculous stuff. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. I'm embarrassed by this. People need to grow up and stop expecting the oversized orange to be a savior. He's not. He's one of them. Please, please grow up. And thank you so much for these early super chats, you wonderful, generous people. Thank you, Swiss Miss and Rosalina Dempsey and Catherine Hutton. You people are stars, and Paul Trainer, thank you so, so much. And talking about Swiss, have to comment on this. How devastating. That Swiss fire, absolutely awful, in the Crans-Montana New Year's fire, January the 1st, devastating fire. I watched it, just absolutely awful. The blazes killed at least 40 people, injured 119 others as of yesterday. Just awful. Primarily preliminary investigations rather suggest the fire was started by sparklers, known as fountain candles, which were attached to champagne bottles that were held too close to the bar ceiling. And the bar's ceiling, it was a frightening combination of acoustic foam. And what it did was it created this flashover, and that's when the temperature in the room becomes so intense that the whole room essentially explodes. And it was just so sad to watch it, because people were dancing and laughing and filming it as the fire was breaking out. And these were very, very young people, some as young as 14. Absolutely heartbreaking to see this. Utterly heartbreaking. And the two managers of the bar, Jackson, Jessica Moretti, are under criminal investigation for homicide by negligence. It should be pointed out it was similar material that occurred in the Grenfell fire as well. Anybody who goes into these establishments and sees this kind of level of acoustic foam needs to get out. Toot sweet. Absolutely awful stuff. It's awful. There's been a few fires these days. Indeed, there has, but really, really terrible, dreadful stuff. Rest in peace, all the innocents. All the innocents. I also see that there has been, during our time away, a call for circumcision safeguards after the death of a baby. Now, circumcision is largely practiced in terms of religion by Judaism, by Islam, in some parts of Christianity. It's not universal. Perhaps African and Eastern Orthodox churches, like Ethiopian, for one example, they retain it as an ancient practice. But the small child, Muhammad Abdisamad, that's his name, very young, bless his heart, matter of months old, 6-month-old baby boy. He was admitted to Henden Hospital, and this actually happened in 2023, but it's only just coming out now because of the coroner, and now they're calling for safeguards. And it really is very troubling indeed, because the truth is there is no actual regulation around circumcision of these boys. And the coroner actually said that there are no national safeguards, no accreditation needed, no requirements for training or aftercare. And he also pointed out that the issue of obtaining consent prior to the procedure is almost non-existent. And the Department of Health and Social Care have now received a report. They have 56 days from the date of the report, which was just before Christmas, to respond. We shall see what happens. I once went to a circumcision party. Very bizarre. I was only in my 20s. I lived with 2 Algerian sisters, and it was very much part of the culture. And it was a huge, massive celebration. It was like the British equivalent to a wedding. It was massive. And at the time, I didn't think much of it other than this kind of funny, right? To be going to a party where a kid has been circumcised. And the kid was circumcised there and then. I could hear the kid screaming. It was just quite barbaric stuff. Yes, female circumcision is also horrific. Absolutely. There are no exclusions around here. And also, before I bring in our lovely Warren, he's wonderful white man, just to say that we obviously did a real deep dive into Freemasonry, and certainly around the Metropolitan Police. Well, on the 11th of December, they announced that a hierarchical organization such as the Freemasons, would now be added to the declarable association policy. Well, I thought that's great because they'd had this consultation and over 60% of Met officers had said that the public are distrusting of the Met. And in part, that is because of the level of secrecy around Freemasonry. Anyway, by Christmas Eve, the Freemasons had filed high court papers. They claim that the Met's policy of adding people who are Freemasons to a declarable list is religious discrimination against Freemasons who are also police officers. They say the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has abandoned them. We're so shocked. We're so shocked. And the Met has vowed to fight back as it sees the policy as part of its fight to restore trust and credibility. Yes, it's got a long way to go, a huge way to go, but nonetheless, but it was inevitable, really, wasn't it? And even the Police Federation are against the policy. What hope do you have when the Police Federation itself, which is brim full of Freemasons, doesn't want the public to know when a police officer is also a Freemason? This is appalling. Institutionally racist and Freemasonic police, says Paul. How are you, Paul? Has anyone ever trusted the Met? Even the Met doesn't trust the Met. This is absolutely true. Anyway, we will see what will happen to this. And they are hoping that they will get a hearing early this month, and they are going for a judicial review. Right, I want to welcome in our Warren. Here he is, Thornton, journalist, political analyst, around good head. How are you, Warren?
I am absolutely fine, thank you, Sonia, and Happy New Year to you and all your followers and listeners.
And wonderful to have you with us. That just blasted me. I don't know if is that too loud for everybody? Let me just hear that again. Morning, Warren, says Boaty McBoatface. Actually, no, I think we are all right. We are all right. So, Warren, so much to talk about. I mean, it's just like we're away for a couple of weeks and the world seems to have kicked off. Clearly, the world was not on a holiday. Not on a holiday. And you've been busy. You've worked throughout Christmas, haven't you?
I have, yes. I've been following what's been going on in Ukraine, what's been going on in Iran over the last 24 hours, and of course, the Venezuela situation, which we predicted they were going to pinch him, but nobody was listening to us, and especially not Maduro, and it ended up that way.
So let's start on this then. So obviously, this is Donald Trump's tweets. Nicolas Maduro on board the USS. And this is where he was captured, and his wife. They've put more efforts into capturing his wife than they have the clients of Jeffrey Epstein, Warren. And also, it should be noted, of course, it was a deadline, wasn't it, from the Department of Justice to do with Epstein. But Trump obviously was very busy invading Venezuela. Take it away. What do you want to tell us?
Yeah, very much so. Now, this was very much a warning. There is no doubt who was behind it. The oil companies, the bankers, were definitely behind this. And of course, there had to be somebody in Maduro's inner circle, and we're talking about his bodyguard inner circle, to be able to get to and access the areas that they were able to access, of course. The nonsense that this, of course, and they're going to have to prove this, the nonsense that he is some sort of drug trafficker and everything else, when there are many other countries that are way ahead of Venezuela when it comes to any drugs being moved or anything else. Of course, there's going to be a nonsense. That's what they're going to try and do to get around the legal ramifications of breaking international law and kidnapping a sovereign, the leader of a sovereign country. They can turn around and say whatever they like, but this has set a dangerous precedent that can now be used by everybody else. And you're absolutely right, Sonia. It is quite staggering that Pam Bondi is able to, first of all, organize a massive army to be able to go in and kidnap a president of a country and, of course, get all the charges ready. And he's appearing in court for the very first time today to get all these charges ready and everything else, and yet hasn't been able to bring one person from the Epstein list to trial. That should tell you where the government's priorities lie.
So what's really going on here? I mean, you sent me the 9 countries without a Rothschild-owned central bank. It was very interesting that Nat Rothschild was straight out the gate congratulating Donald J. Trump. Is this a banking issue going on here, or is it something else?
Well, it is very, very staggering, isn't it, that the only countries that don't currently have a Rothschild bank, in the year 2000, there were 9 countries that didn't have one. All seven of those have now been either overtaken or overthrown. And of course, Iran and North Korea are the only ones that are left that do not have this. Anybody that can't see the wood for the trees here has a real problem. And of course, they're gearing up now, ready to go back into Iran because they're trying the overthrow, which they've done through Armenia and Azerbaijan corridor, as we said they would. They've got NGOs in there, and of course, they're doing all sorts of stuff there, getting ready for that. But the Venezuela, very simply, they bribed their way to getting into his inner circle. They were able to capture him. They wouldn't have been able to capture him unless somebody had literally in his inner circle and the military been told to stand down. So that tells you that the vice president, for everything that she's saying, is absolutely 100% in on this.
And obviously, this is their so-called war room at Mar-a-Lago. And it was very interesting that almost all the screens that they have on show are all showing X. They are looking at what is going on to do with Venezuela on X. I mean, this is so clearly now an entire captured operation that it's just extraordinary. But the other thing that, of course, is interesting is Trump has spent an extraordinary amount of time with Benjamin Netanyahu over the new year, including at Mar-a-Lago. Been a lot of developments going on there. And so many people are saying, oh, come on now, this is absolutely to do with Israel, is it?
Yes. Oh, absolutely it is. Every time Netanyahu turns up, then, of course, we end up getting these sort of things that are turning up and happening. You have to remember that when it comes to oil-rich deposits and everything else, and let's be honest here, let's be absolutely clear, this is about oil. You broke international law. You've actually paraded this guy through the streets of New York by leaving doors open and parading him, which you're not allowed to do under international law. And the other problem that we have with this, of course, is every time Netanyahu turns up, very simply, straight afterwards, there seems to be a massive problem in one country or another where strikes are carried out. And we've had the same thing happen over and over again. There is too much here for it to just be coincidence. I'm like you, Sonia. I look at money. I follow the money. I look at the timing of these things. And of course, very simply, Rubio is neck deep in this as well as Trump. Rubio is a driving force behind this on behalf of Lindsey Graham and, of course, the Israel lobby.
And what about the replacement of Maduro? Because one thing that we know is, I love that little titter there. Because, for example, in last year's presidential election, Maduro shouted, "Long live free Palestine." Now, his replacement talks about Israel's struggle is our struggle. What do you know about the replacement?
Well, I do know that any of the replacements have all been, shall we say, with the cap on, and been seen putting their hand on the wall and praying. And that includes anybody like Machado, who won't get in, even though she's desperate to, the so-called winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, who was calling for an overthrow. But over and over again, you have heard, of course, these people doing this. And of course, this the woman who is now in charge, she's had a long chat with Rubio. And of course, Rubio's another man who likes to place his hand on the wall and headbutt the place. So very simply, what we have here, Sonia, is once again a quorum of bankers, of people who are loyal to Israel and America, just doing whatever they feel they can. But this sets a dangerous precedent now, Sonia, because very simply, the international rule book, or the international so-called rules-based order, has been ripped up. That means that Putin and Xi Jinping can do whatever they like if they want to go into Ukraine and kidnap Zelensky, or they want to go into Taiwan and grab the leader of Taiwan and put him on trial for being a criminal, then they can do that as well. But here's where we have a huge problem now that they've ripped that rule book up, Sonia, is, as I say, anybody can do anything they want from here on in. And of course, we've had the mealy mouse nonsense of the EU going, well, we're looking at the situation, we're not sure. Because if they turn around and applaud what Trump has done, then they can't really moan about Putin going into Ukraine.
Exactly. Let me show you a brief clip from a video. This is General Jack Keane, and he essentially gave the game away.
Implications here are really great for the Venezuelan people.
Anybody missed that? The implications here are really great.
The implications here are really great for the Venezuelan people.
I mean, he literally just gave the game away, didn't he, Warren? There's no hiding this. So it's clearly, apparently so. Massive Freudian slip, which points to the truth. But the precedent, you're absolutely right. And it really concerns me because we have so-called British patriots who are often the biggest traitors. They're on lines. They're demanding that Trump invade our country. Right? That what these people, the level of naivety, Warren, no wonder we've got so much problems because the people who are supposed to be awake are so fast asleep, they're almost comatose.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, Sonia, that most of these people, should we say, people like Starmer, who looked absolutely idiotic and stupid trying to defend the decision of America to do this. And of course, there is the Israel lobby have very, very strong ties to the UK as well. There isn't a party that hasn't taken a huge amount of money from Israel. And of course, when you dig deep into Farage, you find out that, of course, Zia Youssef, who was introduced to Farage, was once part of got a massive amount of money to start for a startup from the Soros Foundation many years ago. So, of course, when you look at everything is circular, everything is connected. And of course, we have to look at everything that's going to go on from here. And Starmer, of course, is a walking busted flush, but Farage will be no better.
Oh, he's no better. Absolutely no better. Viewer Jen sent me an email saying, Sonia, have you seen the film Wag the Dog? I haven't, but I'm familiar with it. And Jen points out that in the movie, the government start this fake war after the president gets accused of molesting a little girl. And I find that extraordinary that you have the Dems Oversight Committee saying Trump had Saturday was the deadline to explain all the mountainous redactions in the so-called Epstein files. And of course, Trump was busy elsewhere. But have you seen Wag the Dog? I haven't seen it.
I have, and it's a very biting satire on exactly what is going on. And you're absolutely right. You see, there is no defense for this. If Pam Bondi can do this to a so-called president of another country, there's absolutely no way that, of course, going through it like a child would with a black felt tip marker, drawing on your walls and going through the Epstein files is quite disgraceful. And it just goes to show you that they don't want to put any of these people in jail because the amount of people that are bankers, judges and everything else, everybody puts out the celebrities, but go and have a look at the bankers, at the money men, the elites that are in the Epstein book, the address book that was out in 2008. So that we know that that's perfectly okay. And of course, the Epstein flight logs. And it is unequivocally a cover-up, no matter which way you try and blend this. And of course, as people are saying, it must be really bad if they're invading Venezuela.
And so both you and I are in no doubt that this is Trump acting on behalf of his handlers in Israel as one example. How much of this is to do with the resources, the rich resources of the land, the oil as one example?
Oh, it's absolutely everything to do with it, Sonia. I mean, the heavy crude is a massive thing under Venezuela. And as you turned around and said, it's been mismanaged and they've stolen it. Well, no, it isn't. China were actually helping to build a refinery. In fact, Chinese delegation was there 3 hours before Maduro was kidnapped. And of course, that's really, really annoyed China beyond belief. But what this will actually do, Trump has turned around and said that everybody will get their oil. No, they won't. China won't get their oil. It is about resources and trying to cut people off from their resources. They've tried to corral Russia. They've tried to corral China. What that will do now that China will not be buying from Venezuela is that they will be more reliant on Russia. And of course, this will push Russia and China closer together.
Well, you've covered quite a lot to do with Russia and Ukraine over, and I was reading your newsletter. Fascinating. Fill us in, Warren.
Yeah, it is very much along the lines, of course, Trump is denying we had the drone debacle where, of course, all these drones were aimed at Putin's residence. Now, first of all, everybody tried to say they were nothing to do with us. Now, let's be perfectly clear. At the same time, and we have this from our source, who's very, very close to the State Department, the State Department were briefing that, of course, they had nothing to do with it. But, of course, then they turned around and said it wasn't at Putin's residence, it was at somewhere near close. But, of course, how would they know that unless, of course, they'd instructed MI6, and MI6 were helping Ukraine to target Putin's residence. And of course, everybody said it was a lie. And then, of course, the Russian ministry were managed to download one of these chips. And this, let me just explain very quickly what happens with these chips. The information is stored on there. You can't get rid of it unless you have the code and you plug it in to actually change the code. And then, of course, to change the pattern. If you were to take that chip that they presented to America, put that in a drone, it would fly straight for Putin's presidential residence. So it is very, very simple. Ukraine and MI6 helped Ukraine carry it out at the level that they did right on shall we say, on the front. But this definitely came from CIA. And of course, very simply, State Department and CIA were briefing the New York Times an hour after the attack took place.
Extraordinary stuff. Extraordinary stuff. Let me go to some of the viewers' comments, Marcuson. TTC says, why now? Presumably in terms of Venezuela. Yes, indeed. Why now? Other than their little soiree at Christmas with Netanyahu, why now in particular?
But it's a very straightforward thing, is to get Venezuela out of the way. They are trying to do the new version of the Monroe Doctrine, which means anything in our hemisphere, of course, has to be got rid of. But the whole idea is to cut China and Russia off from any sphere of influence anywhere else. Remember that the BRICS nations, they are going after them one at a time. And of course, they're going to go for Colombia, and then they eventually going to go after the whole of South America. Brazil will be on that list. Cuba are definitely on that list. Marco Rubio has a warm one for Cuba, of course, because, of course, he's passed and everything else, including his brother-in-law, who was in his house dealing drugs and then actually went to jail. The brother-in-law went to jail for 20 odd years. And when he came out, Marco Rubio helped him get his license for being a real estate manager.
It's so corrupt, Warren. It's so incredibly corrupt. DJ Markson, this is more of a comment really than anything, but you're very welcome to respond to it. DJ Markson says China closed the silver door. The bankers just took 850 tons from Venezuela. What do you say to that?
Yes, they did. And of course, silver is very much, as I say, it's a precious metal that they'll want. Any gold, any silver or anything else, if you've got it in your country, they're going to come after you. Be under no doubt, Sonia, this is about world resources. They don't have the resources. Russian oil, if China cut them off, America are trying to become self-sufficient. And America turning around and saying, we've got all the oil in the world. No, they haven't. They've got good reserves of it, but Venezuela have got far more. This is about resources. Ukraine was always about your resources. There are only 4 oblasts in Ukraine where BlackRock doesn't own land there.
Wow.
And you all know what that's for.
I mean, it's extraordinary stuff, really. I mean, do you think also that they time this stuff during a festive season because it becomes even more outrageous, and because news is generally considered very slow during the festive season? I mean, are there other aspects why they would think this was the right time for it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the Ukraine war is going very, very badly. The Epstein list is out there. We need a distraction. Venezuela's nice and easy because they're a fairly small country, and we know that there is corruption in Venezuela, so we can get to people there. And of course, the same thing that they have to do here. But of course, they do it at a weekend. They do it at 4 a.m. in the morning and everything else. And of course, over the festive season, everybody's going to have their guard down a little bit. And of course, this is something that we've seen in the American playbook over and over and over again. We saw it with the strikes in Iran. And of course, the NGOs are now getting protesters with flamethrowers and Kalashnikovs in Iran just yesterday. And of course, they are trying to do this through the Zangezur corridor, which is the Armenia-Azerbaijan corridor. That's that tiny little corridor above the top of Iran. And of course, the oil companies are in that tiny little corridor, along with American mercenary soldiers or private military companies, as they call them now. And of course, that is a nice, easy way for them to cross the border and start this insurgency. And if that doesn't work, we've got tankers, American tankers, tons of them that have flown to the UK over the last 24 hours and now on their way to Europe. And the jets are already there. So everything points to, if they can't overthrow Iran through the NGOs and the internal riots, of them having another go at Iran with all sorts of missiles.
One more. Jan says Venezuela's people needed help. Who else would come to their aid? How true is that?
Yeah, it is absolutely true. But what you have to remember is, of course, Russia are very much tied up with what's going on in Ukraine and everything else. China are tied up with Taiwan, and of course, fighting. It is a massive logistic problem. Anybody who understands the military aspect of this, it's a massive logistic problem trying to fight a war so far from home. Of course, they needed help, very much so. But there is really nobody in South America that's going to be able to help them. Literally, though, they're not going to put boots on the ground. We always said that they were going to try and either wipe out Maduro or they were going to capture him, because boots on the ground would have caused another Vietnam, and America cannot afford that.
Warren, what are we to expect this week on the world stage?
What you can expect this week on the world stage is a massive build-up towards Iran. This is going to get worse and worse and worse. And sometime within the next month, Sonia, there's going to be an attack on Iran. Israel wants it. America are up for it. There is the machinery is being moved over there. And of course, there's going to be more threats towards Cuba. There's going to be all sorts of, shall we say, decisions made about Ukraine. America started this war against Ukraine, and basically what they want to do is walk away from it. So they're going to do their very best to try and push the EU into doing more and more against them. There will be another round of, would you believe, even though they haven't worked before, we're going to get another round of sanctions packages from the EU. So be on the lookout for that. But Iran and, of course, sanctions packages and more threats towards Cuba and Colombia are going to come.
Wow, huge amount of stuff at the start of this Gregorian calendar year, just in case anybody corrects me that this isn't actually officially a new year. Warren, thank you for being here with us. You can catch Warren Thornton tonight, and indeed, I think most evenings at warrenthornton.com. Also teams up with the lovely Lembit Opik and the wonderful crew over there. It's unprecedented TV, Warren. Let's give them a big shout.
Yes, yeah, they're very good. And just to let you know as well, just giving you an in the distance heads up, look for Zaluzhny and Budanov to take over. And Budanov is a big Israel fan. Zaluzhny and Budanov to take over in Ukraine from the summer of 2026.
Noted, everybody. This is Warren Thornton on Wake Up on Monday, January the 5th, 2026. Warren, take good care of yourself. Lovely. Merv says lots to think about, Warren. Indeed. We love Warren. Happy 2026, Warren, says Curly Crew. Indeed. Warren Thornton, everybody. Take good care of yourself, Warren. Lovely. Bye-bye. Wonderful. Good stuff. He's great. Absolutely great. I knew he'd kick us off in splendid style. I have very, very specifically chosen our guest today with the intention of not only informing us about what has taken place over the festive season, but also to prepare us for the year ahead and also get us through this difficult period of deep midwinter for people in the Northern Hemisphere. Talking about which, I'm going to bring in my next guest. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, Wake Up's favorite psychotherapist, John Henden. How are you, John?
I'm very well, thank you, Sonia, and a very happy new year to you.
And a very happy new year to you too, John. John, you and I have traveled this road now for at least the last 5 years. You have been such a brilliant source of, and I'm loath to say alternative information because that immediately lends people's mind to something that perhaps isn't tested, isn't checked, isn't verifiable, and none of that is true. You actually spent an extraordinary amount, decades in the NHS, didn't you? And so just for those who are not familiar with you, just tell people a little bit about where you're coming from.
Well, this last year marked my 50th year working in mental health, psychological and emotional well-being services. And I was in the NHS for 20 years as a practitioner and a manager. And I've seen it all. You know, I've worked in all sorts of different settings, and I've worked with different systems and different approaches I'm aware of, you know. And for me, as we've discussed before, the solution-focused approach is so liberating, so freeing, and is so helpful to people. And I've specialized in this area with suicide prevention and severe trauma and stress recovery with fantastic results.
You have, and you've also been taking this message all across the world over the last couple of years, haven't you? What kind of responses are you getting from other people about this more solution-focused way of dealing with our psychological issues?
Well, I mean, going across the world, since I spoke to you last, I've been working in New Zealand, Finland, Poland, Belgium, and other countries, and they're really eager for the message, and they want their workers to be equipped and to go on and do great things. And sadly, I have to travel all the way around the world because the UK National Health Service is not interested in the message. They're not interested in saving lives, mental health services in the UK. Otherwise, I'd be working for the partnership trusts and I wouldn't have time to go around the world.
You would indeed, and you've been highly critical, rightly so, about I think it comes with such validity because you understand on a very deep level about what has actually happened, how the UK has formed its various strategies, and so you are, and you have been advocating something completely different. And today you're here with us because, as you said to me, this is really an urgent call for more widely available and effective services for people in acute emotional distress. Is that not available, John?
No, it's not. I mean, it was brought to light yesterday after the morning service at church. A grandmother came up to me in tears. She said, "John, my grandson is in a terrible state, and I spent all of Friday trying to access the CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service." And they were spinning me round saying, well, you have to wait for an appointment and we'll assess. And then he might have to go on a waiting list for 15 months. The whole family is in turmoil because of the distress that this young lad is going through. 3 generations in this family, and they cannot get a service. And, we've discussed on previous shows early last year about the lamentable state of CAMS. And, briefly, the Children's Commission found that in 2022 to 23, and I'm looking at the figures here, nearly 40,000 children were waiting over 2 years for help. How atrocious is that? It's disgraceful. And, in that same year, 270,000 are still waiting for appropriate support after referral, so that CAMS is in a desperate state.
Dire state, isn't it? But they keep reassuring us, don't they? You have Keir Starmer and various people, Wes Street, and they come out and they keep reassuring us they're going to do something. But I feel that they keep missing the elephant in the room, and that is the long-term impact of being locked down and subject to all the coercive control that we were during C-19. That's literally like the elephant in the room that they're not even tackling. I mean, the profound effect that will have on children, I don't think we even yet know, do we, the long-term impact of that?
They won't acknowledge it because they're culpable. They were part of the problem, and so they won't admit that, I'm sure. So going on to adult mental health services, I mean, this is a timely point in the year, isn't it?
So
because
timely.
After Christmas, New Year, people feel low and, what's the year ahead, and they look out the window and it's a bit gloomy. It's a tough month for emotional well-being. So we need these services and we need them now, the Care Quality Commission found that people can't always access the right help at the right time. High demand, inadequate capacity, and lack of training of staff. I talk about this a lot, and there's not a research paper on it, but I wish there had been. But there was a community mental health service in Somerset, in Bridgewater, and every weekday they had a crisis slot. And 39 GPs over a mixed rural and urban area could access this crisis slot with people in crisis, who came into the surgery. So someone coming in at 9 o'clock would say, "Doctor, I'm feeling really desperate and suicidal. I don't know what to do." And you say, "Wait a minute, make a phone call to the community mental health centre." And we had 2 staff available for a lunchtime crisis slot, and we could see that person within 3 hours. I'd like to see that service replicated throughout the country. And what would it save in the long term? billions of unspent money on NHS and social services. You know, they won't do it, will they?
Is it just that there isn't much money in talking therapies, as one example? Is that part of the problem? Because obviously the power of big pharma and the how much of the market that it has is ginormous. Our MPs are compromised, so they're not tackling it appropriately. But talking therapies work, don't they?
Effective talking therapies work.
Effective.
I mean, I teach and practice a solution-focused approach to people's emotional distress, and the 4 or 5 sessions over maybe 5 or 6 months, people are fine. They're back to work and functioning.
Right.
But
Right.
there is no big pharma money in that. And the tie-up, but we've talked about this before, the tie-up between big pharma and big psychiatry
Right.
is like that. They've got it sewn up. And I mean, it brings me on to the suicide rates throughout the country. I mean, in 2007, as I was doing the research for this book, I wrote to Dr. or Professor Louis Appleby, who's the director of the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention in England, and I've written to him twice since. Never an acknowledgement, never a reply.
Oh.
And I said to him in 2006, I said, look, your targets of 15% reduction here, 20% reduction there are not going to work unless you address the biomedical psychiatry or biomedical approach to mental health and emotional distress in these psychiatric units. And last year, I think it was last year or the year before, highest rate of suicide since 2019.
No.
Yes, these figures are constantly failing. And what was it? Let's just get the figures here. I think I've written it down. Yes, it was 2012 to 2024. There were 1,023 suicides within psychiatric units. And I would go as far as to say that at least half of those were due to biomedical psychiatry.
I mean, it's extraordinary stuff, isn't it? We've had parents on here before whose children have taken their own lives when they've been on these units. And there are all manner of issues at play, not least, obviously, there is a problem with staffing. There's a problem with sending people far away from home. That's a real issue, isn't it?
It is. It is. And because lack of resources. But if they had a crisis slot, there's, I mean, in Finland, as a consultant psychiatrist colleague and friend over there, Dr. Ben Furman, he has championed a system of single session therapy. And people who are in great emotional distress can see someone within the week, and they have a session and talk about all the issues and their concerns. Do you know, the majority don't need number 2. They don't need another session.
Why? What is it? What is he offering in that session that is so effective?
The old adage, a problem shared is a problem halved, for a start. And to hear someone who is acknowledging and validating the distress and maybe coming up with a few ideas of what they can do to go forward, and the person really being listened to such that they feel heard. And there's a difference there, isn't it? We can listen to someone, but does that person feel heard by us?
That's an excellent point. I mean, it is a good point, isn't it? Is that oftentimes we're sort of engaged elsewhere. We're now, I'm going to be talking later about the second screen directive, and it's about how Hollywood is manipulating us to look at multiple screens at one moment in time. And we're constantly distracted, aren't we? Our mental health has taken a proper kick in. You're absolutely right. It's very timely what you're talking about now, because it's very much part of marketing, even though it is in the Northern Hemisphere. The dead of winter isn't necessarily a new year per se, because that for many people is the spring. But we are marketed with this whole idea that January is Blue Monday. It's the highest divorce rate day. People have had enough financial stress hits them about overmaxing their credit cards. There's a high employee turnover, all of this. And one of the things that I discovered was that the expression Blue Monday was actually created by a travel consultants, and it was to encourage people during January to book holidays away, and it was actually a marketing tool. So we are bombarded with this whole idea already that we should be full of doom and gloom, aren't we? So it's all our mental health, although you don't like explain to people why you don't like the expression mental health.
Well, I think if you can get the word mental out of the whole equation, then that gets biomedical psychiatrists grubby hands off it, and because what they want to do, and just a little aside here, I've worked with many biomedical psychiatrists during my career who are listening to what the patient says, but only insofar as they want to put a diagnostic label on them and give them drugs, and they're not hearing them. And that is the important thing. And so a lot of people I've worked with who've seen biomedical psychiatrists say, I don't think he really heard me, or she didn't really hear me. So that's just an aside there. But so if you can get rid of this mental label and talk about emotional distress instead of mental ill health, then that throws it open. We can all talk about emotional distress, and the other end of that, or the flip side, is emotional well-being, and what can we do to improve emotional well-being. So it demedicalizes the whole thing. And the thing about the crisis slot I was saying in Bridgewater, which was so effective, and incidentally not one suicide in that service, and we had the most suicidal people come to us, and yet other parts of the system, the inpatients, the recently discharged, high suicide rates, the psychiatrists are always trotting down to the coroner's court. So this is a really important point. The other point about the National Confidential Inquiry, which is supposed to reduce suicide rates, and it's always been increasing. One thing they did achieve, and that was to reduce the means to suicide within psychiatric units. And you never believe this. It's amazing how coincidences occur sometimes, isn't it? 5 months ago, I met the fellow who was the contractor to NHS mental health services to make wards safer and, change the locks and change the ligature points and things, and did so throughout the country. But what happened, that just pushed the problem to post-discharge, and this has been a real problem for psychiatric inpatient units, that once the person is discharged, because they didn't get the help they needed and wanted in the service, when they were discharged, they took their lives.
Oh, I can't bear it.
And the suicide rate has gone up over the last few years. So you could say that removing the ligature points and means to suicide within these units has just pushed the problem till afterwards. So they take their lives afterwards.
Oh,
they are not heard. That people are not trained sufficiently in these psychiatric units. It's all about diagnostic labels and the particular drug to prescribe.
Reba says the drugs totally numb you. We need to treat the root cause, which the system isn't interested in. Now, I know this is something that you and I have discussed before as well. Well, because once you take those, it's almost like you're detached from your body and any emotions. And we need to be in touch with our emotions, even emotions that disturb us. We need to be able to process them, don't we?
We do, and owning those emotions and expressing them safely, and talking about, and we've talked about this whole, we're covering the whole field here today.
Important. I think it's really good to actually, I think it's good to do that really broad sweep, because a lot of people have started this week like they're like, I hate my job, I hate the commute, I hate this weather, I hate the fact that I've had such a fantastic time and now I have to go back into the grind. So I think that you on today is actually perfect, John. So I appreciate you going broadly.
No, fine. And the depression, you've got depression. Well, that's been debunked. We both know Joanna Moncrief at the University College London, and she has debunked the serotonin deficit theory of depression. It doesn't exist. It's about unexpressed negative emotion or unexpressed or unresolved secrets from the past that causes very, very low feelings. So if you express those negative emotions, and if you need to deal with those things in the past that you've just pushed down, then surprise, surprise, your mood lifts. And I'm speaking from personal experience here because I've suffered from both of those, as you know.
I do indeed, which is why your books are absolutely vital, because you do speak from personal experience.
Yeah.
You talk from abuse in childhood. You have a complete understanding of what has taken place, how it impacts you, and how other people are impacted. Because the interesting thing about human beings, of course, is even though we are all individually different, there are commonalities between us, which is why psychology exists, because we are able to map and track human reactions and responses, aren't we? So, John, how do we get out of this? How do we work towards a more positive way without reliance on the system?
Well, there is good news.
Go on.
And I like to be a bearer of good news. I mean,
like
firstly,
that.
just to say something about, as a psychotherapist, it's a delight to work with people who've been pushed down over decades, sometimes with these low feelings of unexpressed or unresolved issues from the past. And to see them brighten up and suddenly start thriving and living a full life, is absolute delight. But I think, nowadays we all need to rely increasingly on self-help and ways to sort things out ourselves, and within the context with our friends and our families. They are a great resource and we should use them to their fullest. So I have 4 tips for those feeling very low and close to the edge, if you like, this time of year.
Wonderful.
And this is a cue, Sonia, for one of my charts, isn't it?
We love your charts, John. We love your charts.
Here we are. So 4 tips for when feeling low. And I'll just get the full picture there. So 3 things we are grateful for. Just to count your, in a way, that's like counting your blessings, isn't it? 3 things we're grateful for. Number 2, what gives us hope that we can get through this time? Because it'll be spring soon. The bulbs are becoming out, the daffodils, the sun will be shining, the warmth on us, etc. So what gives us hope? 3, and what good strategies have we used in the past that have worked or been helpful to us? So perhaps we can use those again now. And then 4thly, a friend to call, that friend who, friend in need is a friend indeed, someone we can call on and say, look, I'm in trouble here. Can I have a chat? Can we meet up? The sort of person that would do exactly the same for if the tables were turned. And someone that obviously someone you can speak confidentially to. And if you haven't got that, and some people find themselves in a lonely position at the moment, there's Samaritans, 116, 123. There's always someone there who's well trained and they are good listeners. So the Samaritans, and then there's the Mind Info line or Mind Helpline, which is 0300 123 3393. So, and again, the principle applies. A problem shared is a problem halved. So they're my 4 tips.
Love that. Let's work through them a little bit. Obviously, things to be grateful for. It can be something as simple as I'm grateful for the roof over my head, the health of my children, the beautiful park I live close to. So it's something as simple as that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hope. I always think that hope is such an interesting concept in itself, because obviously the absence of hope is so problematic for people. So what if people really do feel that their future is hopeless? How do they then dig deep enough to be able to find something to be hopeful for?
Well, hope is really such a big thing. If you do an internet search on hope, you would have so many pages to read. You would need 5 lifetimes to read it all. Right. And it's such a vital topic, and so many people have written about it and explored it. And one thing I found with suicide prevention, and it's all in the book here, Preventing Suicide, where I talk a lot about hope. It's impossible for someone to take their life if there's just a small spark of hope that they can get through it.
Oh, I love that idea. I mean, I love that idea that hope can have that much of an impact on people. But I've seen people transform as a consequence of hope. And I mean, can literally just take a word, a sentence that can change the outlook for people, can't it? But John, we're also, the problem is that in carrying on with your list, right? A friend to call. Some people feel that they're a burden, and this whole kind of assisted dying bill that they're pushing through also has an element that if the person at the heart of it feels a burden, that can be one reason why they are granted assisted murder, assisted suicide. I don't call it what they call it. What are your thoughts about all that?
I agree. And of course, when people are feeling very, very low, despairing, hopeless and helpless, they feel a burden. They feel an enormous burden. And I've heard many stories where such people have phoned a friend and said, look, I'm really sorry to burden you with my troubles. And they say, oh, Jill, I'm glad you phoned.
Right.
Why didn't you phone sooner?
Right.
They don't see them as a burden. But people, when they feel very, very low and hopeless and despairing, they feel a big burden to everyone around them. And they feel, in many cases, I'll be better off dead.
So actually, John, I know that's not why you're on here, but seeing as we just got there, what are your actual thoughts about that assisted dying bill with regard to this?
I'm appalled by it, really. I mean, in Canada, the situation, I think, is, I heard a story the other week about even people with long-term mental illnesses could be up for it. People with, long-term mental illnesses, it means that they have had emotional distress, which has not been addressed satisfactorily by helping agencies for many, many years. And maybe the many, many workers that they've seen have not been equipped to deal with it effectively. And that's why they're in that situation. It's not something wrong with the brain. This has been disproved. This is outmoded stuff,
They've been failed, haven't they? They've been failed by the system.
They have been failed. Yeah. So no wonder they're feeling burdensome. And of course, that can be a reason for going for assisted dying.
Right.
And I think, even people we have such good pain management regimes nowadays. I mean, I've just lost a good friend and colleague last year, and she had a pain management regime. She still managed to get around. She still managed to take referrals for clients that I was referring to her. She died, and I was amazed to discover she was 89.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, she had a good innings, right?
Good innings. And she had good pain management, and so there's always something to give people hope. But, one thing's guaranteed, or two things are guaranteed in life. One is taxes, and the other thing is death. We've all got to face it at one time in the future. But why go for it prematurely when there's hope you can actually get through it and live some sort of quality of life? Now, some people might say, oh, well, that's not a case in every case. And I agree, there are exceptions.
I think
but generally speaking, the principle, I think, is wrong.
So, yeah, sorry, John. I'm just saying, I've just noticed, I think some people are struggling in the comments today. I think Lisa as one example. Hope you're all right there, Lisa. I know it can be very, very difficult indeed. I just want to read you what Terry says. This is interesting. Terry says, I feel that there is far too much emphasis on trauma like it's a trend. And I can't help but feel it's being done on purpose to keep people stuck. What do you think about that, John?
Yes, I mean, this is interesting. There's several thoughts on that. Very briefly, there's one, there's a comment, a phrase goes around, oh, we have trauma-informed therapy. It's not. Well, they may be informed that they've heard about it, but it's not effective trauma recovery therapy. So that's one thing. The other thing is that trauma is being bandied around as a bit of a prop, like anxiety and depression. Well, of course, I can't do anything because I've got this anxiety and depression, I've got trauma, but all these things are recoverable from.
Yes.
With the right service.
With the right service, with the right help. And these 4 points are a great starting point. If you are feeling really sort of desperate today, these 4 points are a great starting point. And if you don't feel you have a friend you can confide in, because that's also an issue, John. Some people, again, going back to the burden thing, but also we are living in a society that has been sold to us now as low trust. So people are really distrusting in a way that I don't think I've ever known. Or maybe I've just wisened up. I don't know. But there feels like a a very significant decline in our trust in society.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
that cannot help our emotional
Mm.
well-being at all, right?
No, that's right. One thing I've got, I mean, you know, sometimes I like to bring two charts, as you know. Would you like to see another one?
Go on, show it.
This,
show it
I
to us.
saw this. You know, sometimes I'm on Facebook, and I use it mainly for business and for work and advertising, training courses and things. But I just happened to see this on a friend. I've got a wonderful colleague and friend in New Zealand, and she puts up these good sayings and good, if you like, what are they like?
Memes?
Short sentences. Sorry,
yeah.
Memes. Yeah, to live life better by. And I couldn't help but write this one down.
Well, let's see it.
Fantastic. And this is particularly pertinent to what you've just said about, you know, not trusting society to deliver.
Right.
In our times of need.
Oh, let's see what we've got here. This is a beautiful way to end this particular segment. Just to say, Nikki said, thank you for this segment. Much needed this time of year. People are calling you the OG, John. That's original gangster, if you're not familiar.
I'll take that.
It's a compliment. It really is.
Yes, I like that one. Yes.
Tell us about the hard truth.
So this is hard truth. If you wait until you feel better to start living, you might be waiting forever. Go live your life. Do it sad, do it anxious, do it uncertain, because healing doesn't always come before the experience. Sometimes experience is what heals you.
Indeed. Wonderful. That's a wonderful way.
I could write a book of the testimonies people have given where that has applied to them.
That's your next book, John. I think that's your next book. I think that's your next book. That would offer a great deal of hope for everybody. John, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. I am grateful for you. And I think that what you've done in order to be able to help people who are struggling is really quite phenomenal stuff. Humphrey said, how dare we have a high vibration? Indeed, 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 indeed. Lovely. It's wonderful to have you here. People are so pleased to see you, John. It's absolutely right. You joined us on this day. It feels, well, like destiny in itself. I wish you a very happy 2026, John. Everybody, this is John Henden.
Thank you, Sonia. And you have a great year, Sonia, and keep doing the great things you're doing about lifting the stones from these topics that certain broadcasting companies don't touch.
Absolutely. No stone unturned around here. Take good care of yourself. John Henden, everybody.
And you.
Wonderful. Absolutely
Bye,
wonderful. Perfect quote as well to finish. And I do believe that that's true, actually. Healing is one of those things that sort of happens in waves over a period of time. I had a lot of childhood trauma that I had to heal. And I thought that I'd healed it when I was 30. Actually, no, I hadn't. I still had more healing to do at 40, 50. And now as I enter my 60s, and all of it actually feels okay. It really feels okay. And some people were like, why does John want to get away from the idea of mental health? Well, because that lends itself obviously to a medical model. And he's looking at other ways for us to address our psychological issues. And let me be very clear here, which we didn't bring up now, but John and I have talked about before. And that is, if you are taking any form of allopathic medicine, depression, or anything at all that is helping your mental health, this is not a call for you to suddenly stop. That's not how it works. That would be extremely dangerous and, well, problematic advice. Seek help in that if you are wishing to rear yourself off of these things. But the message really is that don't lose hope. There are other ways to address any issues that you may currently be dealing with. Words are important, Mels. Indeed, they are. It's a long, winding road, but we'll get there, says Peggy. And that's true, Blue Nomad. You can't just stop these drugs. That's ridiculous. It's dangerous. And I'm definitely not advocating for that at all. And neither is John Henden. Right. I want to talk to somebody else who's very fitting for this time of year. In fact, this day, indeed. So let's bring him in. Here he is, Professor Paul Goddard. How are you, Paul?
Well, I'm very well, and Happy New Year to you and to all your viewers and listeners.
Thank you. And Happy New Year to you too. Of course, we've been having this debate this morning about whether it's really a Happy New Year. Well, it is if you follow the Gregorian calendar, which we do. And but obviously spring for many people, it's the dead of winter. It doesn't feel like a time right now, does it, for us to be setting new resolutions? We need to sort of cozy up and bed down. But you are here to talk about... Yes, go on.
My resolution is not to make any resolutions, and that's an easy one to follow.
Perfect. SMG says, morning, Professor. He's also a doctor. Very interesting history, actually. Like John, has a great deal of knowledge of how the system works. You were in radiology, I think, weren't you?
Yes, I was the professor of radiology, and my first book I wrote, actually, I've got a copy here, Diagnostic Imaging of the Chest, 1987. That was my first textbook. Yes, I was
Whoop, you're cutting off from us. We
and
definitely
following on from well, we both cut off, so I don't know whether it's you or me.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, I've got you now. I've got you back. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. We both disappeared then, so I don't know whether it was which side it was, but yes, I retired very early from the NHS at the age of 54 with depression myself, brought on. I call it depression, but it was brought on by the management of the NHS. And sometimes the only way of dealing with these things is to get away from the thing that's making you feel miserable. I had a very good psychiatrist with talking therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and his view was that all of my arguments were completely correct. The NHS did have big problems, and the only way I could survive it was to remove myself from it.
Yeah, many people talk about what a toxic work culture exists within the NHS, largely driven by management now, isn't it? It seems less of a health service and more of a management service. Am I being unfair here?
No, you're completely right. What actually happened was that back in the 1970s, it started with the change in the nursing structure. They had a report called the Salmon Report. And previous to that, they'd all worked on a Florence Nightingale system. And they decided they would try to make it more like the civil service. And they created nursing officers, and they turned a lot of the nurses into managers. This was followed under the Thatcher era. That was under the socialists. Then under the Thatcher era, the doctors went to Thatcher and said, we're short of cash in the NHS. We're doing very well, but we're short of cash. We need more money. And she said, no, what you need is better management. And she followed some of the American models and created the management structure that we now have. It's just got worse and worse in the NHS. And I'm told since I left that it has got far worse. So
yes, indeed.
I'm very sorry about that. That's not to say you can't get good treatment in the NHS. You can.
True. Yeah.
But not always, because the difficulty quite often is getting into the NHS, is getting into the system. Once you're in the system, you can be treated very well. But it's no surprise when you look at the way that the wages have worked. I mean, I started in the NHS way back in 1968.
Wow.
Yes, as a theatre porter. I worked in a local hospital before I started in medical school, a local hospital in Croydon, and actually the pay was good. Now, if you work as a porter in a hospital, the pay is very bad. What has happened is the poor have got poorer, the rich have got very much richer. And people like the doctors, for example, you would think they were the rich. No, I'm afraid they're not. They're just workers like everybody else. And they're not the ones who've got richer. The people who've got richer are those who have put themselves above all of this. As we've said, the management. Earlier on, we talked about bankers. Yes, it's the bankers. The bankers, the managers, the chief executive officers. And usually they're people who have very little need for training. I'll give you an example. A chief of a water company. Why would a chief of a water company deserve to have salaries in the millions a year? Why?
Especially Thames Water.
These are companies in Thames. Yes, these are people who are failing, and they're taking millions.
Failing upwards.
Taking millions.
Yeah, they're failing upwards.
It's just.
Paul, Mel points out that you're looking fabulous for your age. And I agree. Absolutely. You're clearly doing something right. And I like the fact that you've been candid about your own health, your own psychological struggles.
I've always told people all of the things like that, because I don't suppose I tell people everything about my health. I hurt my leg recently, for example, and I've not told many people about that, but it's doing very well.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
I fell off a ladder.
I'm not sure how I'd get through the rest of the week without knowing that, but I am really relieved to know. Do not climb ladders, okay? That's for the professionals, okay? So you and I have talked on a number of occasions. We talked because you're an author. I think you are a publisher as well, aren't you? You're a publisher.
I am. What happened was that with that one, Diagnostic Imaging of the Chest, it was published by a firm called Churchill Livingstone, and it never went into a second edition, even though completely selling out, because Churchill Livingstone were bought by another company, and they already had a book on the same subject. I would, of course, say a book not as good as mine, but not that I'm biased.
I've not read any of them, but I know that for a fact.
and I looked at this and I thought, we ought to be publishing these things ourselves, because although I made some money from that, it wasn't commensurate with the amount of work. So we have over the years published journals and lots of books. And we've recently, we got more back into the mainstream with our books on medicine when I published Pandemic. And that was because of the COVID. I had been predicting the COVID pandemic. I was giving lectures on the history of plagues, and my last but one slide said forthcoming pandemic, novel coronavirus, and that was before the COVID. And people say, oh, how did you do that?
Well, because they had it all worked out, Paul, surely. I mean, because
exactly.
And you yourself know, because I've talked to you about this before. We know for a fact that they already had those jabs good to go before the C-19 was even launched, correct? They needed a market to fill for those jabs, didn't they?
You see, also the interesting thing is that when the pandemic was acknowledged as being there, suddenly the control of healthcare was taken out of the control of the doctors, and it was given over to the spies, given over to GCHQ. It was no longer healthcare, and when we had all the lockdowns, etc., we were under a form of military rule. And that is a difficult thing for people to even think about or even believe. And when we were given the jabs, yes, they already had the mRNA technique and they knew they could make jabs very quickly. What they didn't know, and they still have been refusing to let us know, is the danger of these techniques. Because they hadn't been... There's no way that you can really test these things in a matter of weeks. Of course, where did the virus come from? I knew that they were making these viruses in China with the help of the Americans. I knew that.
Right. So here's the thing is that because you and I talked before about the death of science, which was I think your last book, if not your last book, one of the last books, wasn't it? And that
Yes.
was about how we had reached, if I remember correctly, that's about how we had reached a stage where suddenly we were no longer allowed to question their science, right?
Correct.
We were in a state of play in the world in lockstep where everybody is told one narrative and they must stick to that narrative regardless. My camera's just gone a bit funny, which is just odd.
That's right. We can still see you.
There we go. You've got me there, I think, haven't you?
Yeah.
And so it was very much about how the idea of science, because science should, the whole point about science, right, is we should be able to question it. It's never really settled, is it, until it's settled?
Well, it's never settled because the whole point about science is that it's the opposite way of thinking of religion. I'm not saying that they're all wrong, religion. I'm not actually going into that. I'm just saying it's a different way of thinking. So that instead of saying this is truth and this is what you must believe, science does the opposite. It puts up a thesis and it says we've now got to test it. And we test it to try to prove it wrong. And if your tests are just to try to prove it right, that's not a real scientific test. So what you actually do with science is you have an idea and you try to see if you can disprove it. And if you disprove it, you go on to another idea.
Right.
So even the most fully accepted views of science are still open to questioning and for people to try and disprove them. And that is how science progresses. And of course, that is the exact opposite of people saying, follow the science. We are following the science. And actually, they're doing nothing of the sort. They're just having parties.
And thankfully, you have like-minded, well, not necessarily colleagues, but people who've been in the profession as well, like Professor Angus Dalgleish. I know that he's like a personal friend of yours as well as a contributor. Angus has been on with us on a number of occasions. Angus, of course, is the one who is revealing the I think the jab and cancer links, right? That's correct, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he is. That's true. That's correct. That is, yes. Well, so my latest book with Angus, and with Lois Tutton and with other authors. I have to point out that we have 9 authors, I think it is in it, including Professor Sanjay Gandhi, Rosamund Jones, S.D. Jackson, and my brother Stephen helped me with it. My wife, my son Mark. We've all been working on this as a family thing, wow. But they've all got their own interest, as it were, and their own expertise, which has helped me write the book. And we've been looking at the way that science, as we said, has been ruined by big business, by governments. But then moving on, we've moved on a bit from that. We've taken more of the examples and followed the money, as we say in the strap line there, just follow the money. Because as the rich get richer, they really don't want other people to in any way challenge them. And so this follows on from talking about the Venezuela and the bankers, the side of the regard to the bankers.
Right.
But the example of the water companies was just, to me, an astonishing example, because if you asked a doctor to run a water company, I think they would probably struggle for about 2 weeks, and then they'd run it very well, because they understand, a nurse as well, they understand the importance of clean water, they understand the importance of getting rid of sewage safely, and they would do these things and do it well. So I tell you why in particular it would be easy, because the people who are the customers cannot change. You cannot change to say, well, I'll have a different water company and I'll have a different sewage. No. Right. So this is why there's no problem running the company. All you've got to do is make sure that the systems are working, that you understand how the water is cleaned, collected clean, and passed out to people, and how the sewage is collected, and et cetera, which I think would be fairly. But if you asked a chief executive officer
Right.
of a water company
Right.
to become a doctor,
Right.
now you've got a different problem, haven't you? That would take them 6 years before they got the most basic degrees, and another 6 years before they could become a consultant. And at that point, they would still be quite ignorant.
Well, that is the problem, isn't it? Is our health service is being run by the money men and the money women. It's very much a business model now, as a American style insurance system that we're heading towards, if indeed we're not already there. So it's very much about a business, isn't it? Completely inappropriate people are running the health service because it's about
inappropriate
money.
people running the water companies and
Yes,
the power
yes,
companies,
yes,
and they're making
yes.
vast profits from public services. And it shouldn't be that we have chief executives in the NHS. We don't need them. We don't need these management people. And we talk about that in Profiteering from Doom. But we also go on about the other problems more.
Well, I want to address some of those other problems because it's very interesting and it's very in line with what we talk around here. Because let's use climate change as a perfect example, right? And one of the things that you've said is that we are not allowed to have any adequate debate. And when you look at Ed Miliband, for example, his department being given absolutely thousands to create these, to turn farms, actual farmland, into just an array of solar panels. So talk to us about the profit in the doom of climate change.
Well, you see, the thing is this, that there are certain topics like climate change which become a holy cow, and we're supposed to believe it, and we're not allowed then to have science. We have to accept the narrative they give us, a narrative which happens to be wrong. Now, if we look at climate change, do we have climate change? Yes, there's always climate change.
Exactly.
The climate has over the centuries changed. We know this. We know there was a mini ice age just before Dickens, and that's why he wrote about all the frozen Thames and all that sort of thing. And we know that earlier than that, there was a medieval warm period. So there's been climate change with or without human intervention. And I say with and without because, yes, human intervention does cause climate change, certainly on a local basis. We know this. We know that cities are warmer than the surrounding countryside. You'd expect that. We're burning up fuel. We're making the place hotter. And there are other reasons as well. There's heat sink effect. Heathrow Airport, for example, great big areas of tarmac. The sun comes out, heats up the tarmac, and it holds the heat. Now the aeroplanes take off and they pour heat on the tarmac. So isn't it strange that it's Heathrow that the climatologists use?
That's right. No, absolutely.
They use Heathrow to measure the temperature of London. Yes. That's not the temperature of London. That's the temperature of Heathrow. It's a hot place, and it's yes, right. So, what are the things that can cause climate change? There's enormous things. First off, the sun. Let's be quite honest. The climatologists never talk about the sun, and yet that is where all the energy is coming from. The sun. So, the sun goes through 11-year cycles, roughly 11-year cycles of solar sunspots. And at the moment, we have been in a high sunspot period, which actually means that there's been a lot more heat coming from the sun. And then it'll go down to a lower thing. But there's other bigger cycles as well. And there are volcanoes. There's so many things that can affect
the earth is just living. The earth does its thing, right? And what's happened is that we've had these people who have gone, oh, well, I can capitalize on that in a way that will obviously benefit my shareholders, will benefit me. And we are constantly being actually ruled by venture capitalists. Our politicians now are really just marketeers, aren't they? I mean,
Well, look at Al
absolutely
Gore.
guilty.
Look at Al Gore.
Do I have
Al
to
Gore's
really,
a very
Paul?
good example because Al Gore. Al Gore failed, didn't he? He was a failed politician, really. And he comes out with this thing about climate change in which he says it's all due to CO2. Look at this correlation between the temperature of the world and carbon dioxide. Well, number one, the carbon dioxide went up after the temperature went up. On all of his graphs, you see that the temperature of the Earth goes up first, then the CO2 goes up. So cause and effect seems to be the other way round. Of course, the climatologists will say, oh, yes, but once the temperature's gone up, then the CO2 goes up, and that pushes it further. I'm afraid that it isn't borne out by the fact that there are times when the CO2 is high and the temperature of the Earth has been low, and vice versa. So it's by no means a good correlation. So he goes on and he creates this video in which he frightens everybody. He tells people that the Netherlands are going to be flooded, that the New York's all going to be flooded, that the polar bears are dying, that the barrier reef is dead, the Great Barrier Reef. None of these things have turned out to be true.
Yes, but didn't he do financially very well from a lot of this, though, Paul? And isn't
Well,
that your point about profit? I know
well,
you might be concerned about defamation or whatever, but seriously, didn't Al Gore has done well for himself?
Well,
hasn't he?
his company that put out the video, which he owns, went from maybe worth $1 million to now worth 100 million.
Oh.
So yes, he's done exceedingly well out of it. None of his prophecies have turned out to be correct. So is CO2 something that affects the climate? Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is a greenhouse gas. Is it true, though, that if you raise the CO2, you will definitely get a rise in temperature? No, that is not definitely true. Why? Because there are so many other factors, so many. For example, water vapor is a more important and more significant greenhouse gas than is CO2. There are many other things as well that are greenhouse gases, but it's not just the greenhouse gases that affect it. So CO2 goes up. What does that do? It's a plant food. It's a plant food. It means that we get more lush vegetation. In fact, many people have said, many scientists have said that the CO2 had got dangerously low and that if it got much lower, the plants weren't going to survive. I'm not sure that that's true because I've noticed how these things evolve and they change, and there will be some plants that don't mind having a bit lower CO2. But it is one thing that people say. So what we're talking about here is multiple feedback loops. We're talking about a huge amount of variety and so many different factors that we're dealing with a chaotic system. And in a chaotic system, it is possible that by raising the CO2, you might get a commensurate raising of temperature. It's also quite possible that nothing happens at all because of the feedback loops, all the other changes and everything else. So right. Yes, they've pushed this, and worse, though, than that is that they've set aside enormous sums of money to do the most dangerous experiments, such as seeding.
Yes, cloud seeding. Yeah.
Yes, and trying to put stuff into the air to stop the sun coming through.
And trying to convince us for the longest time that none of that was happening as well on top of that. I mean, one of the things, obviously, that you address in this is this whole idea of this pattern of ignoring any debate, which we've already covered to a certain degree, but they've gone even further than that. They're not just ignoring debate, they're mandating what we can actually talk about now, and that is the state of affairs. It's a terrible state of affairs. With your history and your understanding, you must be horrified to see where we are in 2026.
I'm utterly shocked because I've been fighting against this and talking about it for so many years.
Yes,
and for a lot of this time, people thought I was completely bonkers, suggesting that we're living in a bureaucratic dictatorship and that this is holding us back. But people are now waking up to this and aware that this is true. Now, look at the COVID again, the Hallett report. The Hallett report, you talked earlier about there being an elephant in the room. There was a big elephant in the room during the Hallett report, the first part of the Hallett report.
Which is the UK COVID inquiry, just so that everybody is very clear on that.
It is the UK COVID inquiry, which is costing huge sums and is run entirely by lawyers.
Yes, and isn't it to solidify a narrative to stop any of them getting in trouble, though? Isn't that really what's going on here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing, when I say we, I mean the people who have been contributing to my books, Death of Science and Profiteering from Doom. They put stuff into the Hallett report, questions, and none of their questions were asked because they didn't allow them to be asked. The Hallett report would only allow questions they wanted asked.
Yes, and that's often what people don't realize is that the terms of reference will inform what you get at the end of it, right? So they scope it in such a way that it's not outside of the remit of what they've already agreed to in the last 5 years.
So the big question there was, in the first one, were we prepared? And they refused to look at where it came from. Now, how can you say, were we prepared? What's the point in asking, were we prepared, if you refuse to look at where it was coming from? If I was able to predict a pandemic, so were many other people. They knew what was happening. So the answer is you need to know where things are coming from. You need to know why they come, and then you can be prepared. Why were we not prepared? Well, that's one of the things we talk about in Profiteering from Doom. When the NHS was set up in 1948, suddenly there were a whole load of hospitals in the NHS. They didn't come from nowhere. They were actually charity hospitals and local government hospitals. They were taken over by the NHS. 480,000 beds. Right. Now there's 120,000 beds. But what have they done? Where have all the other places gone? They've sold them off. The NHS stole those in the first place. The NHS stole all of those beds and all of those hospitals. And they have gradually reduced. Now, one of the reasons they were able to get away with that was people like myself. I developed computed tomography and MRI. I didn't invent them, but I did develop their use. And MRI, for example, has replaced the use of quite a lot of other investigations. And for example, a person comes in with suspected multiple sclerosis. They used to stay in hospital for a week or 2 weeks whilst they had a series of tests. Now they can have one MRI as an outpatient, and that'll take half an hour.
Right.
So that is an example. Another one is keyhole surgery. A patient comes in, ultrasound tells the doctor what's required, and then using minimally invasive surgery, the patient is treated. Now, these things mean that you don't need so many hospital beds, but none of these advances help the patient with flu.
Right.
So a person, they're just not relevant.
Right.
They're just not relevant.
Right.
And in the past, the hospitals ran at 70% bed occupancy. Now they try to run at 100% or more. Now, how can you have more than 100%? There are two people in the same bed, but
yeah, that's
times,
right.
Different times of the
this
day.
lends itself to a much bigger conversation, which I hope we can actually have one day, because I'd like to actually discuss with you in more detail about this, including the ridiculous Nightingale hospitals as one example, and all the madness.
Oh, yes.
I mean, there's just so much madness that took place. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But I think
Nightingale Hospital, you're completely right. They knew that there would not be sufficient, if what they were going to get now was equivalent to a massive flu epidemic, if we're talking COVID, and it was very similar to the flu, they knew there weren't enough hospital beds, so they thought the answer is we'll create hospital beds. You've got to have staff.
Right.
When we talk hospital beds, we're talking about staffed beds. We're talking about nurses, porters, cleaners, doctors. We're not talking about administrators. We'll forget about the managers.
Right. I know. I get your point. I get your point, and unfortunately, I'm
And
going to
so
have to send. But I take your point, because the thing is that also what you're saying is we need to stop treating the NHS and the guidance that we're receiving as some sort of, I don't know, sacred cow that can't be questioned. And that has been the problem, is we've gone along with this groupthink for too long now, and people like you and I are being increasingly criminalized for daring to think outside of the box. I think
this is absolutely true, and I would point out that when it comes to vaccines, the same thing has occurred. When doctors come out and say, actually, we don't think the COVID vaccine is safe, they've been put in front of the GMC.
Yes, Dr. David Cartland as one example.
Struck off,
Sam
or
White.
they've been sacked. They've been sacked by their management. Because the narrative they've been told to put out, the management have been told to put out, the GMC have been told is safe and effective. Whereas we know full well that the vaccines were not safe and effective. They were neither safe nor effective. And this is the sad thing that has happened to the world. But again, it's the management structure. In the past, medicine was governed by the GMC and by the Royal Colleges. And it was doctors voted to put people on the GMC, and there were government representatives and there were other representatives from other bodies. So now the GMC is controlled completely by the government. Oh. Right. And there's no voting for it.
Scandalous.
It's just a government quango.
Yes, it is.
And this is the thing that has happened. But I have an understanding of why this is, which is based surprisingly on Hegel's law of the dialectic. I say surprisingly because Marx...
Problem, reaction, solution. Yes.
Karl Marx, not Groucho Marx.
No. Problem, reaction, solution. I have to speed you up a little bit now. We've got.
Yes, of course. Yes. And so what you have there is Hegel's law of the dialectic. You have a thesis, an antithesis, and then you have the answer, which is synthesis. But that becomes the new the new thesis. So sure, that is what we're in now. We're now in the synthesis, which is, as I say, bureaucratic dictatorship. We talk all about that in The Death of Science and in Profiteering from Doom. So I do say to people, do have a look. Actually, The Death of Science today is available as an ebook at 99 pence. I was going to try and get Profiteering from Doom as an ebook at a ridiculously low price, but I can't do that for another few days.
Send me a link. Email me the link. I will get it in the description so people can get it for 99p if they want it today. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I think this has been a really important conversation, actually, and I think that I never necessarily plan themes for this show, but they often quite naturally follow a type of theme, and this theme is don't necessarily believe what you're told. Okay,
that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Take good care of yourself. Lovely to see you, Paul Goddard, everybody. And Happy New Year to you too, Paul Goddard, everybody. You can call him a doctor, you can call him a professor. Either way, he's a good man because he's asking important questions. Take good care of yourself, Paul. Happy New Year. Lovely. Cheers. Lovely to have him with us. How are you all, you beautiful people? And Paul and I have had disagreements before about C19, but the one thing that we come together on is the whole idea that you should be able to ask questions. It is vital to be able to debate, and we've not been able to do that. Great guest, said Healing Guidance. Fantastic overview of deep state from Warren. Oh, you're just catching up. Cheers, Paul, says Mel's. Top Prof, says SMG. Yeah, he's a star, isn't he? Right, let me move on to some news that I wanted to cover. One of the reasons we are not streaming on the X platform, formerly Twitter, is because it has a serious child abuse problem. I've been away from social media for a couple of weeks, took time out. It was absolutely brilliant. When I went back onto X yesterday, I was actually horrified to discover that the place stinks of child abuse. And I have a very acute nose for such things. And as one example, AI's in-house tool is generating images of children in states of undress. And this is in part because of the huge intake of degenerate incels that Elon Musk has attracted to the platform. Now, as a journalist, I've spent many years reporting on and exposing the sexualization of children, and I will not be live streaming on X until they properly tackle their child abuse problem. It is utterly repugnant. It is utterly predictable. And this is an assault on child safeguarding on every level. It must be dealt with. The fact is that Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI in-house GIMP, essentially their tool, that has been developed in such a way they could easily have put in safeguards to protect children. They chose not to. They have quite literally bolted the tech stable door after the horses running free in the field. It is an epidemic on all levels, Randy. It absolutely is. And it's unacceptable. Humphrey, incels, question mark, says Ian. Incels are generally males, no sex or romantic life, but they are like totally engaged with their online life. They're usually gamers. A lot of them now are talking about, Christianity, and they've hijacked Christianity. But the incels don't like females at all. And so this Grok tool is now being used to debase females in a very significant and serious way. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting is, first of all, something just fell over there. I don't know what it was. X has acknowledged that it has allowed images of minors to be in these kind of stages of undress. So what happens is these predators on X, they say, Grok, can you do me an image of the child from Stranger Things, which is a common one, and can you put her in a bikini? And it does it. And that gets spread all over the internet. So Elon Musk has allowed that. He's enabled that. That safeguards, as I say, could have been put in place long before any of that, but they weren't. They chose not to. And I thought it was very interesting because it's not just happening to children. This is also happening to women as well. What you're having is these incels, again, these degenerate males with no kind of life outside of their computers, and a hate of females as well. They are taking all manner of female images, and they're asking Grok to strip them, make them naked, do all manner of things. And I noted that at the BBC, there was a BBC article, and it featured somebody called Samantha Smith. And I was like, I recognize her. And it was really interesting because she was talking about how there is a real problem here, and that her image had been taken, and that she, like other women, were feeling dehumanized after Musk's Grok AI had digitally removed her clothes. But I was like, wait a second, they're not mentioning, in fact, none of the media mentioned what Samantha was most famous for. Samantha is most famous for speaking out about grooming gangs. So let me get this straight. Elon Musk, big advocate for overthrowing grooming gangs in the UK, is allowing grooming gang victims to be targeted by his AI GIMP. That's what's happening. It is absolutely, Kenny. It is Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes territory, their crew again. Absolutely. It's absolutely disgusting. Sally says they all seem to be normalizing child abuse. Absolutely. And the reason that I say X stinks of child abuse is because it simply does. Not so long ago, Elon Musk was saying, let's bring in an image of him. Not so long ago, Elon Musk was saying, the reason that Donald Trump won't release the Epstein files is because he's in the files. But then he was back with Trump at Mar-a-Lago over the Christmas period, of course. And now no mention of any of the victims, of any of the survivors. Let me just pop that there, because it's all back game on and everything. So this man never, ever cared about survivors of child abuse or about grooming gangs, because if he did, he would have made sure that there were sufficient safeguards on his platform that he is on 24/7, that it would not enable the debasing and the ritualistic humiliation, the sexualization of children. And his platform enables all of that, all of it. And I'm not having it, which is why we are not live streaming on X. X also, I'm deeply shadow banned. The problem is when you call out Musk, you get shadow banned. When you call out Israel, you get shadow banned. When you call out child abuse on X, you get shadow banned. Very interesting stuff. And that's true, Rachel. Women and children are having their rights violated from all angles right now. Absolutely. And one of the world's #1 platforms is a pusher of child abuse. Fact. Absolute fact. Stephen, it's true. Some incels do indeed like dressing up and calling themselves women. Gab, is that Gab? Gab is available again, at least. Don't see that there. True. So this year, I'm going to absolutely make big intention to explore elsewhere. I actually hate X. I mean, I really hate it. I go on there and I immediately feel like, it just feels, like I say, it stinks of predators. That's the problem. Yes, he is, Kenny. Elon Musk is all about the money and maximum influence, like all the tech billionaires. Indeed. So yes, that's been going on, and that explains to you why we are not live streaming on X. Absolutely not. I won't do it. Won't do it until they pull that together. Filth is for the filthy, Humphrey. It really is. And Aurora, yes, women abuse children too. Remember Myra Hindley? Absolutely. I'm not one around here who doesn't acknowledge the crimes of women. Trust me. But I get you. I absolutely get your point. I just want to double check that there wasn't any news that I'd missed earlier. I felt that there was a story that I'd promised to cover that I haven't yet covered. Let me just check that. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It was nothing of major importance, and we covered a lot of it with Warren anyway. A great overview from Warren earlier. If you haven't heard it, please do go back and check it, because it's absolutely worth it. And so that was just to say my thoughts about X and its clear child abuse problem. And also, I just want to say this, and that is, if you're going to have a New Year's resolution, which in my opinion is based on a phony New Year, at least make it a good one. Right now, a friend suggested a brands not to buy because they test on animals. And I think that is a fantastic resolution. And if you want a starting point, avoid like the plague any of these groups. The L'Oreal Group brands, which covers Lancome, Maybelline, Yves Saint Laurent, and more. The Estee Lauder company's brand, which covers Bobbi Brown, Clinique, Jo Malone. The Procter & Gamble, Head & Shoulders, Herbal Essences, Pantene, Old Spice, all of them are tested on animals. Johnson & Johnson, very dangerous, of course. Look what happened with their talcum powder, which they denied for years. And then there were multiple lawsuits because people had cancer as a consequence of using Johnson & Johnson talcum powder. So avoid Johnson & Johnson, avoid the Coty brands, Unilever brands such as Vaseline. And it's interesting because Dove also falls under. Now here's an issue, is that some of these brands will tell you, no, we don't test on animals, but that's not true, because what they say is except where required by law. Well, this typically refers to mainland China, where imported special use cosmetics like sunscreens and hair dyes or products flagged for safety concerns still undergo mandatory animal testing. Okay, so if their products are sold in China, they are still enabling the testing of animals for products. And honestly, apart from the fact that we know the testing of animals is not a good barometer in which to gauge how a medicine or how a beauty product will impact a human being, but they still do it. And it's horrendous stuff. So I just want to continue on that theme, because it was interesting over Christmas that British government, they are now, English law is finally doing the absolute bare minimum to alleviate animal torture and suffering. Okay, so one of the things that they're doing is they're banning the boiling of lobsters, and while they're still alive, a particularly horrendous practice, and carried out by psychopaths, frankly. And so they are outruling that. It's already illegal in Switzerland, Norway, and New Zealand. Animal welfare charities have long said that stunning lobsters with like an electric gun or chilling them in cold air or ice before boiling them is more humane. I wouldn't know that because I don't eat lobsters. But the idea of boiling them alive is clearly a problem. Clearly a problem. And then there's other changes that they've announced, such as the outlawing of hen cages, the outlawing of pig farrowing crates, the ending of puppy farming, the consulting on banning electric shock collars for dogs, and introducing what they call humane slaughter requirements for farm fish. First of all, I wasn't aware that electric shock collars for dogs was still a thing. What the hell? I mean, what the hell? And John, you're absolutely right. What about halal and kosher? Both of them are torturous ways to kill animals. But the issue I've always had is a lot of people who jump on the whole idea of halal and kosher, they do so because of their prejudices. Because the truth is, abattoirs are horrible, horrible places, and animals are treated in a terrible, terrible manner. But the truth is, Labour's animal welfare strategy does not go far enough. We should, first of all, ban all animal testing. There is a petition. Everybody knows how I feel about petitions. I wish they were more effective. They generally aren't. There's a petition doing the rounds. They're halfway there to getting the government debate. It's to end testing on dogs and other animals for development of products for human use. And of course, the MBR acres in Cambridge, which is where they are breeding on an industrial scale, poor little beagles, which are then used for testing. Horrendous, horrendous stuff. There's so much that needs to be tackled. When I say that the government are introducing bare minimum, they truly are. It's really problematic. The RSPCA, which is the body whose job it is to prevent cruelty to animals and rescue animals, is essentially toothless. I'm sure I've told this story before. I used to live next door to people who would leave their dogs home alone regularly at weekends. 3 dogs, which they themselves admitted had separation anxiety, and those dogs would scream and whine day in, day out when they were left alone. And on one occasion, after many months, I couldn't take it anymore, and I sought advice from the RSPCA, and the advice was, unless I could look through the letterbox and see that one of the dogs was dead, they couldn't do anything. Absolutely toothless, absolutely toothless. France has introduced much stricter laws when it comes to animal welfare. And in fact, they've just this Christmas introduced an abandonment fine. So if you abandon a domestic animal, you can face fines up to 45,000 euros. And offenders also face a prison sentence of up to 3 years. Because also a lot of people, they'll get dogs and animals for Christmas, and then the fun wears off and they just abandon them. But in France, you do that and you're in trouble. Fishing is a real problem, Squidgy. They're talking about factory farming, about the fishing industry, the problems there. It was the Conservative government which finally agreed that animals are sentient beings. In other words, they feel pain, they do suffer. And that was only 2022. Only for 3 years have we acknowledged, our government acknowledged, that animals feel pain. It's shocking. And the other thing that I want to tackle in this animal welfare thing is an issue that many, many Brits absolutely loathe and deplore, and it's only a certain section of society that love it, and that is fox hunting. And what they have instead is trail hunting. Well, trail hunting is a cover for fox hunting. And essentially what they do is that they have an animal-based scent trail. It's laid down for the dogs to chase while riders follow on horseback. Well, in the UK, it's a big thing on Boxing Day to have their fox hunting meets, right? And which brings me to my next point, and that is shut the F up Nigel Farage. Now, I don't like this man at the best of times, right? I think he is a traitor. I think he is a traitor. Here he is. You can smell him from here. I once walked past him and he stank of booze and stale cigarettes. And Nigel Farage is disgusting. He is a traitor, absolutely. But he's managed to convince people that he's one of them. Of course, not people like me who are more savvy, but he's not one of us. Absolutely not. He is a tool of the establishment, and he's come out and he's fighting for fox hunting. And he made the headlines over Christmas. Of course he did. Nigel Farage would be absolutely nowhere without his mainstream media chums, who have long given him news coverage that he neither warranted nor deserved. But there were 2 particular events where, I say he was speaking up, and one of them was to do with fox hunting. Well, you see, the thing is that some psychopaths who are resident here love to chase foxes on horses. That they abuse the horses, they abuse the dogs, and it's a ritual. It's a satanic ritual. It's a Boxing Day satanic ritual where the Satanists on horseback are surrounded by village idiots egging them on. And I come from fox hunting country, the Cotswolds, and viewers know I loathe and deplore fox hunting with a red hot passion. And my very first activism at the age of 11 was where I stood on a bridge in my village in Siddington in Cirencester, Gloucestershire, and I refused to let hunters go past. And I dragged along a reluctant friend who had less of a sort of anarchist spirit than I did, but we refused to allow the huntsmen and women to go through because these people are obscene. They're absolutely disgusting, and the Boxing Day hunts typically see very heated clashes. Anyway, Labour are now saying they're going to ban trail hunting, and Nigel Farage there with his stinky beer cigarette breath is busy saying, no, you mustn't do that, because he's one of them. He's one of them. And the other second Farage soundbite is about locking up for life sex offenders. And again, he's just done this as a soundbite. So what he said is that he and Reform UK, his shitey party, will have announced a new justice policy to impose mandatory whole life prison sentences for people who carry out like sexual assaults. Sit down. This is the man who, according to Rupert Lowe, who left Reform, this is the man who was not interested in tackling the issue of grooming gangs, okay? These people are only interested when it becomes a popularist issue. And I like that, Squidgy. New perfume coming. La Farage smells like a pub. Doesn't Farage mean vagina in a particular language? I think it does. I think you'll find it does. Anyway, he's a disgusting human being, and he has no real interest in stopping the abuse of children and young people in this country, because he could have done more already. He's not in power. It's very easy to make big claims. Our prisons are overflowing because he failed to actually adequately oppose what was happening, where people are being locked up for social media posts. So absolutely ridiculous individual. I'm sure I told you my Nigel Farage story, where I was invited to a very select private dinner with 8 people, I think 6 to 8 people, at a very lovely little boutique restaurant in I think it was Mayfair a couple of years ago. And I didn't know Farage was one of the guests, and I only found out on the afternoon. And I contacted the man who had invited me, and I said, I'm not coming. I'm not sitting down and breaking bread with Nigel Farage. And that was even before kind of like he had his second wind with Reform. He has long been a chancellor. He disgusts me. He doesn't represent us. He represents the hierarchy and the elite establishment. And they're disgusting. And yes, Steve, GB News should be renamed Reform UK. Such a laugh this morning, says SMG. Yes, I'm full of it. What language makes him a vag? Can't remember which one it is. Right. So yes, Nigel Farage, shut the F up. I want to also talk very briefly about the second screen viewing directive. Have you heard about this? Because it makes so much sense. When I heard about it during the holidays, I was like, oh my God, that makes sense. That makes sense. So the second screen viewing directive is a trend where TV shows and movies are now being intentionally written to be simpler and more obvious. And they're being written on the basis that when people are watching, for example, online or streaming services, they are also in attendance with a second screen, right? They're scrolling or they're shopping. This is the ultimate dumbing down of society. And it's a strategy where streaming services like Netflix and Prime, for example, and they do it to keep distracted audiences engaged. And the result is even further dumbing down of TV. There's less subtext, less complex storytelling. And the idea is to prevent viewers from getting confused and turning off the show. And so the key aspects of this directive, which is so little known, but we're already being manipulated by it, is there are simplified plots, and stories are now essentially being designed to be easily digestible, even with divided attention. So if you're scrolling or shopping, it's fine, because you could still get what's coming up on Netflix. And characters also now, rather than show, because it used to be show don't tell, it's now show and tell, right? So now rather than you just seeing a sad character, they will stay. I'm feeling sad. That is part of the second screen directive, and it's extraordinary. I love watching YouTube while paying bills on my phone. It's heaven. Rachel, read more books, watch old films. Got you. The dumbing down of education and of people. Kate, it really is. And obviously what's happening is the impact on content is going to be incalculable because there'll be less nuance. There's a potential decline in like the complexity of characters. They'll become very one-dimensional. Intricate plots will kind of be a thing of the past. This is absolutely a dumbing down. That I'm in no doubt about it whatsoever. Right. Where would I be without mentioning this howler, this incredible howler from Erika Kirk? Erika Kirk, of course, I'm sure you've all seen the memes online now. Erika Kirk is the widow of Charlie Kirk, who we were told was slain on September the 10th, 2025 in Utah. And obviously there's all this stuff that's coming out about Fort Huachuca, I think that's how you pronounce it. And the idea is that a man named Mitch Snow claims he saw Erika Kirk along with Charlie Kirk's chief of security, Brian Harpole, at this Fort Huachuca on the September the 9th. That's a day before Charlie Kirk's death. Snow alleges they attended a secret meeting involving the US military. This is something that Candace Owens has been carrying and covering. And Erika, the Merry Widow, and the memes are frankly hilarious, aren't they? I mean, they are hilarious. And the problem is that people just aren't buying into it. And I think this is a perfect example. This is Erika Kirk telling us exactly what is really going on.
Loss of Charlie Kirk, my incredible husband at UVU. Caleb has persisted with the same gift. Grit. It has been a long with the same gift. Caleb has persisted with the same gift.
Caleb has persisted with the same grift as her ex-husband. Yes, absolutely. She said it. She couldn't help it, because the thing is, I get that, Rachel, what you just said there. The thing is that the point about Freudian slips like this is because that's what's really going on in her subconscious. She knows that since we've been told about the death of her husband, Turning Point USA, of which she's now the big boss, absolutely coining it in. It's a grift. It really is. It really is. Yes, Shin, I did hear Nicki Minaj calling J.D. Vance an assassin. Nicki Minaj, who Charlie Kirk had said is a very bad role model for young black women. But hey, that's not what Erika thinks. Yes, Em. Look at the cube symbology on the stage. Absolutely. Look at it. It's like a pyramid structure, right? Oh, SMG, that's interesting. The slips are deliberate, in my opinion. Why would they be? Explain that to me. Anyway, I just thought, couldn't let today go past without mentioning that. Not at all. I have, of course, been uploading to my YouTube channel throughout Christmas. A lot of it thankfully, was done by Christmas Eve, and then it was just scheduled. So I wasn't working throughout the whole 2-week period. Very grateful for many, many of your comments. And just to acknowledge Marie, who sent me an email about George Michael, and I will be looking into that, Marie. I will. It's fascinating stuff. And also we had competition winners from our last show of 2025, winners of Sean Parker's book, Panopticon. If you can leave him a review on Amazon or really wherever the book is available, that would be very much appreciated by him. Thank you. Maggie won Clive the Carl Secret Health Club membership, and Clive will be joining us next Monday. We haven't seen Clive in ages, but we loves him. So he'll be joining us, which is absolutely great. Did you? I love the Thames vid, Sonia. Did you? That's all that fluff. So that's interesting. The Thames vid you're referring to is me, because I live in Teddington. We live in Teddington. Is me going to the old Thames television studios, Teddington Lock, and also Benny Hill's home. And actually, I received a really interesting comment from 3 Ed B saying just to the right of the studios was a drive to a little site where a few businesses were located, including my father's office, where he designed and manufactured display stands for companies like Palatoy. There were some brown brick residential buildings adjacent to where one of the guys who wrote for Spitting Image lived with his parents. We lived on Lower Ham Road on the other side of the river, and I would often walk along the path by the Thames and over the bridge to visit my father at work. In one of those uncanny crossovers in life, I would have been walking across that bridge with the first few issues of HHC back around 88 to 89. Thanks for the footage. Even though that part of Teddington looks like it's changed a lot, it brought back a lot of great memories. Thank you so much, everybody. I very much appreciate your responses to all the videos over Christmas. Indeed, I do. And as ever, of course, donators, thank you so much. You people are stars. Dear Alison sent me an actual card. Where is it? Have I got it here? From Canada, all the way from Canada, with a contribution for Wake Up. You are also awesome, Alison. I very much appreciate it. And can I just point out that one of the competition winners, important to point out, has still not claimed their prize. It's Claire Stevens. I sent you a winner email on the 23rd of December. Has it gone into your spam box? Check, Claire, because you're the winner of that book, and we can send it to you. So as ever, thank you, you dear wonderful people. Thank you, dear Alison. That was very generous of you. Thank you to Catherine M, to Margaret R, to George MCK. Thank you for donations to my legal fund. Thank you to Alan A, to John G, to Valerie, to John and Amanda W, to Rochelle G, who said best of luck and congratulations on the impressive work you've done with Wake Up. Watch your show every week and love it. Thank you, Rochelle. Truly appreciate that. And thank you to Eleanor J and to Hound Dog Shop. You will notice in the description below, there is a link for my legal fund. So if you fancy backing your local neighborhood investigative reporter, the link to the legal page is below. And I am fundraising in earnest this month. So if you can help me, I would very much appreciate it. Wake Up is worldwide, Peter. It really is. Yes, it is. So what else do I want to say before I come on to the final point? Because it's quite a profound scenario kind of hit me over Christmas. Actually, I think I'm going to get to it. I think I talked before Christmas about how I'd had to go into this temporary office block for one of the shows. I think it was Friday's show. It's because we had scaffolding on the house because our bathroom ceiling had developed a leak, and we'd had one man come out and he'd fitted a fan, and that wasn't the solution. And so we ended up having to have the bathroom ceiling, the bathroom roof replaced. Big job. At one stage, because I was making fresh coffee and giving mince pies to all the workers. And at one stage I went out and there were 6 guys on our roof. It was like, what? Anyway, this weekend, the scaffolding came down and it was on Saturday. And Saturday was a Cancer full moon. And well, there's only one sign. If you follow astrology, which I'm interested in, not from a kind of a newspaper level, but I'm interested in astrology and kind of what it says about us and how it impacts us, and how sometimes are more kind of I think they say the stars incline, but they do not impel. In other words, the stars can influence events, but we have our own free will. Anyway, so the Cancer full moon, the moon is only Cancer is the only sign ruled by the moon, right? In the same way as Leo is the only sign ruled by the sun, right? But so when there is a full moon in Cancer, it's big news and it does impact people. And when the scaffolding came down, I was like, this is really symbolic, because scaffolding symbolizes safety. It symbolizes protection from accidents or danger. And the idea of it is that it is to strengthen what is within that building, right? So I saw great symbolism in it. It got me thinking about the importance of scaffolding, actually, and how it related to my life, and how seeing it successfully removed relates to the next chapter of my life. Scaffolding itself, it symbolizes something that is temporary. It symbolizes structured support that enables growth, learning. It enables construction, and scaffolding is eventually removed once independence or stability is achieved. It represents a bridge between current abilities and potential commonly used kind of a bridge to get you to where you need to be. And it's, as I say, it's about gradual independence, because you see scaffolding, it's very visual, isn't it? It's very physical. It took over our whole front garden. Very visual, very physical. And it's like, whoa. And people make assumptions about scaffolding. They don't necessarily think that is about maintaining building. They often think, oh, they must be very wealthy inside because they're going to be having extensions. So it also creates an idea in those observing it as well. But what it also lends itself to is great growth and potential. It's about care and effort, and it's about structure and safety. And I saw all of this as a metaphor for what I've experienced during 2025. Really interesting stuff. And I equally saw that when the scaffolding came down, I have now emerged, right? I am now, the butterfly emerging. And I definitely feel that. Just saw on the upside down, did you? We need scaffolding to get to Babylon, said Blue Eyes. And you saw the crescent. I saw the whole of the moon. I love that. I love that song, SMG. And the moon was actually incredible. It was so powerful. But I saw all of that as a metaphor. But I'm very interested in the Chinese New Year as well, which obviously doesn't start until February. So even though in the Western world, largely our new year, according to most, started on the 1st of January. For many people, it doesn't start till spring, but Chinese, it starts in February. And I also saw that along with my scaffolding as really interesting, because 2025 was the year of the snake. Now, what do snakes do? Right? They're not easy creatures. They can be terrifying, but they also shed. Right. And this, I think, 2025 was a year of shedding things that no longer work for us. Toxic environments, toxic relationships, attachments that are outdated and outmoded. Thank you, Summer Breeze. I appreciate that. But what is interesting is we are now entering the year of the horse, right, in February. Now, the horse has a completely different symbolism to everybody than the snake does. A horse is about sort of running free. It's about strength. It's momentum. It's forward movement. It's action with purpose. And that is where we are. It's action with purpose. We are not carrying old energy. That skin is still shedding, but I think we can still allow it for a further month, right? Throughout January, carry on shedding that old skin. And I think that's really important. So I saw all of that. The mounting of the scaffolding, the removal of the scaffolding, us moving in from the year of the snake into the year of the horse, all of this stuff. Is it a fire horse, Boaty? And yes, horses now, Kira, horses now. Toss the snake oil too, all of it. Unfortunately, for poor snakes, the representation of them is really negative, which is a bit of a pity. But there you go. Anyway, we are now absolutely moving into a new phase. I'm in no doubt about it whatsoever. And it feels wonderful. I can feel the new energy. Can you feel the new energy? I can feel the new energy. How have you all been feeling? Fire Horse 2, which is even more dynamic, Peter. And yes, Aurora, I got you. I absolutely got you. And this I'm just putting on the screen, of course, my wonderful patrons, everybody who supports Wake Up. And one of the things that I know is so important throughout 2026 is we must not use the language of our oppressors, right? We must be really careful, which is why when I hear people talking about things like, pandemics and stuff like that, it does trouble me because it plays into a narrative which has already been preset. You've been feeling good. And Glennis is off. The grace of horses, exactly that. M 1111, absolutely. And so I just want to say, as ever, first of all, thank you to all of the people who've been incredibly generous to me today. I really appreciate that. Thank you, KR, Kath Hutton, Rosalind, Swiss Miss, Paul Trainer. All of you people are absolute stars. And I did see something from, oh, here it is, Sticky Marks. Happy New Year, Sonia Renault. Novichok, Russian for cheers. Love and peace from this crazy old and flipping, what's that? Something ladyish. I'm Yorkshire. Well, I love Yorkshire people. Wonderful. Wonderful. Salt of the earth types. Absolutely. And so, of course, where would we be without a quote to end today's Wake Up? The first of the new Gregorian calendar year. And that is, old energy is clearing. New energy is entering. Great things are coming. The only thing you have to do is be patient. And on that note, I want to wish you a fantastic week. Be kind to yourself because it really is freezing. Blooming freezing. And I think that TLC is so important. I started to get something in my throat last night. It feels better. today, actually. I took some Clive de Carl, fantastic products. I took loads of vitamin C, the immuno supplements as well. This is not a plug. I'm not paid to say this. I just know that it's really good. Great stuff. Thank you all for being here. And I will see you Friday. Lovely to have the team back together, says M. Absolutely. Don't forget to like on the way out, says Glennis. Thank you all. This year isn't a 9, Del. Just to say, last year was a 9. So last year was completion. This year, 2026, right, is 10, and it goes back to 1. So it's actually a new start. But I take your point. Have a magical week to you too, lovely males. Thank you all. Boaty was feeling super low, but the tribe is the best. Absolutely. And please feel free to come and join us in the live chat where people genuinely take care of each other. It's really wonderful to see. Another banger of a grand rising. Thank you, Stella. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you all. Randy and Swiss Miss. Lots of love to you all. See you Friday, people. Take good care of yourself.